Introversion and extraversion are two terms coined by Carl Jung that describe the direction of your psychic energy. An extrovert directs energy outward toward people, events, the external world. An introvert directs it inward toward thoughts, reflection, the inner world. Jung wasn't talking about being shy or outgoing. He was talking about how the mind orients itself. The extrovert processes life by engaging with it. The introvert processes life by withdrawing from it. Both are strategies for navigating reality. Neither is broken. You already know which one you are. You leave a party and you're either drained or charged. You sit alone and you're either restless or restored. You felt this your whole life, but probably explained it as a preference. Jung said, it's deeper than that. It's the architecture of your mind. The extrovert who never turns inward becomes addicted to stimulation, noise, action, people. Without them, panic sets in. The introvert who never turns outward builds a fortress of solitude so thick that real human connection can't get through. Whichever side the other one starves. The starving side doesn't disappear. Jung said, it sinks into unconscious and runs the show from there. The burned out extrovert suddenly craves isolation. The lifelong introvert does something wildly impulsive. The neglected opposite always demands its turn. Jung didn't give you a personality label. He gave you a map to the part of yourself you've been avoiding. The persona is your social mask. The word comes from the masks actors wore on stage in ancient Rome. It's a curated version of you that faces the world. You build it by learning what gets rewarded and what gets punished. Over years, you assemble a role: the confident professional, the easygoing friend, the responsible parent, and you wear it so often, it starts to feel like skin. The persona isn't lying. It's editing. You know this one. You've sat in a meeting performing competence you didn't feel. You've laughed at a joke that wasn't funny because the room expected it. You've watched yourself shapeshift between friend groups, adjusting your voice, your humor, your opinions, and wondered which version is the real one. The doctor who can't stop being the doctor, even at the dinner table. The CEO who's forgotten who they are without the title. The people pleaser who's performing for so long, there's no one behind the performance anymore. When the mask fuses to the face, the prison is invisible. The persona is necessary. You can't walk through life without a social face. Jung's warning wasn't to destroy it, it was to never confuse it with who you actually are. The persona is the costume you choose. The danger is forgetting you're still wearing one. The shadow is everything about yourself that you've pushed out of sight. Every impulse you've denied. Every trait you've disowned. Every version of you that didn't fit the story you wanted to tell. It forms through subtraction. You learn what's acceptable and what isn't. What gets praised and what gets punished. Everything that falls on the wrong side gets shoved into the unconscious. Where it doesn't dissolve, it accumulates. The shadow is the landfill of the psyche. You know it by your reactions. That co-worker who irritates you for no good reason. That person whose selfishness makes your blood boil. That disgust you feel towards someone's arrogance. Their weakness. Their need for attention. The intensity doesn't match the situation, and that's the clue. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to the mirror. Someone who spent a lifetime being good builds a shadow packed with aggression. Someone who's always been strong buries every ounce of vulnerability. The gentle person snaps. The moral crusader is caught in hypocrisy. The bigger the gap between who you perform and who you suppress, the more explosive the eruption. Jung said, the shadow always holds gold, unlived creativity, buried passion, strength you were taught to hide. The parts you're most afraid of are often the parts you need the most. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's the part of you that's been locked in a basement, banging on the door, and the longer you ignore the knocking, the louder it gets. A complex is an emotional knot buried in the unconscious. A cluster of memories, feelings, and associations wired together around one painful theme. A mother complex, an inferiority complex, a power complex. You don't choose them. They form from experiences that hit too hard and got swallowed whole. Jung proved they exist in a lab. In 1903, at the Burghölzli Hospital in Zurich, he read people 100 words and measured their response time into the millisecond. Whenever someone froze, stuttered, or went blank, it meant the word had struck a complex, a knot too charged to process smoothly. Your boss says one sentence that sounds like your father, and your chest tightens. A partner uses a specific tone, and you're suddenly 12 years old, flooded with shame you can't explain. You felt this. An emotional reaction so fast and so disproportionate that it clearly isn't about what just happened. It's about what happened years ago. Complexes don't just store pain, they take over. For a moment, they replace you. Your voice changes, your body tenses, and you're running on a script written decades ago. You fall into one like stepping on a trapdoor, and you don't realize it until the damage is done. Most people blame the trigger, the boss, the partner, the situation. Jung said the trigger is irrelevant. The explosion was already loaded. The complex just needed a match. The unconscious isn't a metaphor. It's a force, and it has a faster reaction time than you do. Archetypes are universal patterns hardwired into the human psyche. Not images, but templates. Empty models that every culture fills with its own stories. But the shape underneath is always the same. They're inherited through the structure of the mind itself. The hero who goes on a journey and returns transformed. The mother who nurtures or devours. The trickster who breaks the rules. The wise old man who appears at the crossroads. These figures show up in every mythology, every civilization, not because cultures copied each other, but because the blueprints are built into us. Every movie you've ever loved runs on archetypes. The mentor who guides the lost hero, the villain who embodies chaos, the journey from innocence to knowledge and back. That chill you get when a story hits deep, that's an archetype resonating with something you've been carrying since birth. When an archetype possesses you, you stop living your own life and start living a myth. You fall into the hero and believe you can save everyone. You fall into the martyr and sacrifice yourself for people who never asked. The archetype takes over and you think it's your idea, but it's a script written millions of years ago. A factory worker in Zurich described dream imagery straight out of Egyptian mythology he'd never studied. A housewife painted mandalas identical to Tibetan ones she'd never seen. The patterns come from somewhere deeper than personal experience. Archetypes aren't characters. They're the invisible architecture behind every story humanity has ever told. The collective unconscious is a layer of the mind beneath your personal memories, shared by every human being who has ever lived. It's not made of your experiences. It's made of patterns that existed before you were born. Proposed that just like the body inherits physical structures through evolution, the mind inherits psychological structures, instinctual ways of seeing, feeling, and responding. The archetypes live here, the raw material for every myth, every symbol, every god. You walk into a cathedral you've never visited and something vast moves through you. A serpent appears in your dream and you feel awe, not because of anything you learned, but because that symbol is older than language. You hear a story about a hero descending into the underworld and something in your chest recognizing it before your brain does. Flood myths appear in every civilization. Cultures separated by oceans produce identical stories about heroes, death, and rebirth. Children who've never read a myth draw mandalas and dragons. The patterns are too consistent, too universal, too old to be coincidence. Freud said the unconscious was personal, a vault of repressed desires. Jung said there's a basement below Freud's basement, and in that basement, all of humanity is connected. The collective unconscious isn't mystical. It's the operating system that came pre-installed before you ever opened your eyes. The anima is the unconscious feminine figure inside every man's psyche. The animus is the unconscious masculine figure inside every woman's. They're not stereotypes. They're psychic realities that shape how you relate, love, and create. The anima acts as a bridge between a man's conscious mind and his deeper emotions. She shows up in dreams as a mysterious woman, a lover, a guide, a witch. The animus appears as a voice of conviction, authority, or judgment. Both carry everything about the opposite sex that you've never developed in yourself. You felt this. Someone walks into a room and you're captivated before they've said a word. That instant, overwhelming chemistry. Jung would say you're not seeing them. You're seeing your anima or animus projected onto a stranger. The fascination isn't about who they are. It's about the unlived part of you they're carrying. The projection takes over completely. You idealize them, you worship them, you build a fantasy that has nothing to do with who they actually are. And when they fail to be the god or goddess you made them, when they're just a person with flaws, you feel betrayed by something that was never real. Most people spend their whole lives chasing this figure in other people. Jung said the real work is to withdraw the projection and meet the inner figures yourself. An integrated anima connects a man to creativity and soul. An integrated animus gives a woman clarity and strength. You're not half masculine, half feminine. You're incomplete until you stop looking for your missing piece in someone else and start finding it within. Projection is when you take something unconscious in yourself, a trait, an emotion, a desire, and see it in someone else instead. You're not seeing them, you're seeing you. It works through the shadow. Whatever you've repressed gets pushed outward onto the people around you. The jealousy you won't admit becomes she's the jealous one. The ambition you've buried becomes he's so power hungry. Your unconscious uses other people as scenes for the movie playing inside your head. Someone irritates you way more than the situation justifies. Someone fascinates you and you can't explain why. You feel absolute certainty about someone's character within seconds of meeting them. That intensity is the signal. When your emotional response doesn't match reality, something unconscious is projecting. Projection distorts entire relationships. You're not fighting with a person, you're fighting with your own shadow reflected back at you. You're not falling in love with a person, you're falling in love with your own unlived potential. The relationship becomes a hall of mirrors where nobody sees anyone clearly. Jung said, projection is actually the beginning of self-knowledge, if you catch it. The moment you ask, wait, is this about me? That's when real growth starts. It means taking back what you've been putting on other people and owning it as yours. Everything that irritates you about others is really just a shortcut to understanding yourself. Synchronicity is what Jung called a meaningful coincidence. Two events connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. He published a paper on it in 1952 with Nobel Prize-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Jung proposed that mind and matter aren't as separate as science assumes. At some deep level, the inner world and the outer world are woven from the same fabric. Synchronicity is what happens when that hidden connection briefly becomes visible. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call you that afternoon. A word you just learned appears 3 times in one day. You wake up with a feeling about something and it happens before lunch. You've dismissed these moments your whole life. Jung said they deserve more attention. A patient was describing a dream about a golden scarab. While she spoke, Jung heard tapping at the window. He opened it, and a scarabaeid beetle flew in, the closest thing to a golden scarab in Switzerland. He caught it and handed it to her. That moment cracked through her rigid rationalism in a way years of analysis hadn't. The coincidence didn't cause anything, but the meaning it carried changed everything. Jung didn't force synchronicity into a causal framework. He said some things don't need to be explained. They need to be noticed. The meaning isn't the mechanism, it's in the timing. Synchronicity is the universe rhyming, and the people who pay attention hear the pattern. Active imagination is a technique Jung developed for communicating with the unconscious while you're still awake. You quiet the conscious mind, drop into a state just before sleep, and let images rise. Then, instead of watching, you engage. You talk to the figures that appear, ask questions, and let them answer. It works like a controlled dialogue with parts of yourself that your ego can't access directly. Figures appear, sometimes familiar, sometimes ancient, sometimes terrifying. The ego doesn't lead, it listens. The unconscious does the talking, and it says things your waking mind would never produce. You've had a version of this, a thought that arrived fully formed and surprised you, a dream figure that seemed to know more than you do. That strange sense of being spoken to by something inside you that isn't quite you. Jung took that experience and turned it into a method. Jung created the technique in 1913 when he'd broken with Freud and started having visions so intense he thought he was losing his mind. He encountered a figure named Philemon, a wise old man with enormous kingfisher wings, who taught him things his conscious mind couldn't have known. The lesson was shattering. Your thoughts aren't always yours. Sometimes they arrive from somewhere deeper than the ego. Jung recorded 16 years of these encounters in a massive red leather volume called the Red Book: Visions, Dialogues, and Paintings. He considered it his most important work, then locked it in a Swiss bank vault. It wasn't published until 2009, 48 years after his death. Active imagination isn't meditation. It's negotiation, a conversation between you and the parts of yourself that are older and wiser than your waking mind. Enantiodromia is a principle Jung borrowed from the ancient Greek philosopher. Two Greek words, enan meaning opposite, and dramein, meaning to run. Literally, running toward the opposite. When anything is pushed to its extreme, it flips. The more you suppress one side of yourself, the more pressure builds on the other. The unconscious doesn't accept one-sidedness. It demands balance. And if you won't provide it voluntarily, it provides it violently. Jung called this psychological law as reliable as gravity. The disciplined person becomes more rigid. The optimist pushes harder into positivity. The nice guy doubles down on niceness. You've seen this. Someone building an identity so aggressively one-sided that you can feel the pressure mounting underneath. The surface looks stable. Underneath, something is about to snap. The relentlessly positive person collapses into depression. The control freak's life descends into chaos. The man who spent decades being nice explodes with rage that shocks everyone, including himself. The flip is sudden, total, and seems to come from nowhere. But every denied emotion, every suppressed impulse, every "I'm fine" that wasn't true added pressure to a system that was never designed to hold it. The Chinese understood this thousands of years ago. It's a principle behind yin and yang. The seed of each opposite lives inside the other. And when one side dominates completely, it collapses into what it tried to deny. Enantiodromia is a warning. Whatever you be will eventually become the only thing you are. Individuation is a process of becoming who you actually are. Not who your parents wanted, not who society approved of, not who your persona pretends to be. The real, full, contradictory, whole version of you. Every theory Jung developed, shadow, persona, anima, animus, projection, complexes, describes a piece of you that's been split off from consciousness. Individuation is the process of bringing those pieces back one by one. Not by thinking about them, by living them. Something in your life stops working. The role you've played for decades feels hollow. Your relationships hit the same wall over and over. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. That restlessness, that unnamed ache, Jung said, is the self calling you toward wholeness. You confront your shadow, the parts you've denied. You withdraw your projections. You stop blaming others for what lives in you. You meet your anima or animus, the inner figure you've been chasing in other people. Each step strips away a layer of illusion and replaces it with something heavier but more real. Jung didn't promise this would make you happy. He promised it would make you real. Individuation isn't about eliminating your darkness. It's about carrying your light and your darkness at the same time without pretending one doesn't exist. Jung spent his entire life building a map of the human mind. Individuation is the journey that map was made for. I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop your ideas for the next one in the comments.